Says the hardest film he's ever made.
I think for all of us, it was an incredibly challenging movie in all the right ways. I mean, I like to say it was a nightmare in all the right ways.
Christopher Nolan has finally broken his silence, and Hollywood cannot stop talking about it. For months, the most celebrated director on the planet stayed completely quiet while the internet declared war on his $375 million adaptation of the Odyssey. The trailer was buried under more than 500,000 dislikes. A billionaire publicly accused him of losing his integrity. Online communities organized boycott campaigns, review bombing operations, and months of sustained mockery aimed at his casting choices. And through all of it, the man who does not even own a smartphone said absolutely nothing. Christopher Nolan sat down for a series of interviews and addressed the hate campaign head-on. And what he said has split the internet right down the middle, ignited a fresh wave of backlash, and set the stage for one of the most dramatic opening weekends in modern box office history. This is the full story of the war between Christopher Nolan and the internet, how it exploded, what he really said, and how it all just came crashing to its stunning conclusion. The hate campaign that shook Hollywood. To understand why Nolan finally spoke, you need to understand just how ugly things got. When Universal announced that Nolan's follow-up to Oppenheimer would be a massive adaptation of Homer's Odyssey, the reaction was initially euphoric. This was the dream project. The most technically gifted blockbuster filmmaker alive, taking on the oldest and most legendary adventure story in Western civilization, shot entirely on IMAX cameras, with a cast that reads like an award ceremony seating chart. Matt Damon as Odysseus, Anne Hathaway as Penelope, Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Zendaya, Charlize Theron, Mia Goth, and more. A $250 million production budget, with roughly another $125 million reportedly spent on marketing. The scale was almost unheard of for an R-rated historical epic. But then the details started coming out, and a very loud portion of the internet turned on the project with a fury that few modern blockbusters have ever faced. The first flashpoint was the casting of Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy. Critics of the decision argued that casting the Oscar-winning Kenyan-Mexican actress contradicted the character's traditional description in Homer's original text, and the online reaction spiraled far beyond normal casting discourse. Then came the casting of Elliot Page as Sinon, a Greek soldier, which detractors seized on as further proof in their eyes that Nolan was making choices for reasons other than fidelity to the source material. Then the trailers dropped, and a third front opened up. Audiences noticed the modern, contemporary English dialogue and the American accents in an ancient Greek setting, and the clips were mocked relentlessly. Add in complaints about the near-total absence of actual Greek actors in a story that is arguably the crown jewel of Greek culture, and you had a perfect storm. The numbers tell you how big this got. The final trailer for the Odyssey reportedly amassed over 542,000 dislikes, one of the most brutal ratios ever recorded for a major studio tentpole. And this was not just bots clicking a button. The top comments under the trailer, mocking the Helen of Troy casting, racked up tens of thousands of likes from real users. One comment riffing on the famous Helen line sat at over 10,000 likes. Another, a play on the face that launched 1,000 ships, rewritten as the face that emptied 1,000 seats, climbed past 19,000. Some industry watchers claimed that audience tracking had actually softened in the weeks after the casting controversy peaked, and reports circulated that Universal had skipped certain influencer screenings, which skeptics took as a sign the studio was nervous. Whether or not those interpretations were fair, the narrative had taken hold. A very vocal corner of the internet was openly rooting for the Odyssey to fail, and they believed they were winning. The billionaire who declared war. And it was not just anonymous commenters. This backlash had famous, powerful voices, amplifying it to hundreds of millions of people. Conservative commentator Matt Walsh publicly criticized the Helen of Troy casting in posts on X, and Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, replied in agreement. Musk went even further in the broader discourse around the film, saying that Nolan had lost his integrity and suggesting, without evidence, that the director had made certain casting choices specifically to qualify for Academy Awards diversity guidelines, a claim that has been widely reported as simply untrue, since those eligibility standards do not work the way Musk described. But truth was never really the point. When the world's most followed billionaire declares war on your movie, The war is happening whether you participate or not. What some are calling the anti-Odyssey movement openly predicted that all of this would translate into financial disaster. The theory circulating in these communities was simple. The Nolan cinephile base had locked in their IMAX seats a year in advance, but the general audience, the people who actually decide whether a $250 million movie lives or dies, had allegedly checked out over the casting. According to this theory, the Odyssey was going to be Nolan's first true humbling, the moment the untouchable auteur finally got dragged back to Earth. Nolan finally responds, and the pressure on Universal was enormous, because this was not just any movie riding into that storm. The studio had bet the farm. Beyond the $250 million production budget, Universal rolled out a global promotional campaign with splashy premiere stops in London, Paris, and Mumbai, treating the Odyssey like the cinematic event of the decade. Insiders reportedly understood that the film would need a box office run as long as Odysseus' own journey home to justify the spend. Every dislike, every viral mockery thread, every softening tracking report landed on top of one of the largest financial gambles in the studio's modern history. And hovering over all of it was the memory of Oppenheimer, the impossible success story, a 3-hour R-rated biopic about a physicist that opened to $82 million and rode word of mouth to nearly $1 billion worldwide and 7 Academy Awards. That film made Nolan look untouchable. The Odyssey backlash was, for his detractors, the long-awaited chance to prove that he was not, which brings us to the moment everyone had been waiting for. In the final stretch before release, Christopher Nolan did something he almost never does. He engaged. And you have to appreciate the almost comedic setup here, because Nolan is famously the most offline man in Hollywood. He does not own a smartphone. He's ever logging on himself. So, when interviewers asked the most analog human being in the film, the entire entertainment press leaned in to hear the answer. Speaking to The Telegraph, Nolan dismissed the entire months-long controversy with a shrug, saying it simply comes with the territory. His core argument was that conversations happening before anyone has actually seen a film are always, in his word, irrelevant, because none of the people having them know what the movie actually is yet. And then he did something fascinating. He compared the entire Odyssey backlash to what he went through on his Batman trilogy. He explained that when he started Batman Begins, decades of artists had already shaped what that character meant, and enormous amounts of baggage and expectation were floating around about what Batman represents. The lesson he said he learned across that trilogy was that you cannot worry about any of that. All you can do is honor the original text by interpreting it in the strongest way you personally can, and in his experience, even fans who would have made different choices ultimately responded to the sincerity of the attempt. He defended the modern dialogue too, and this is where you can feel him getting genuinely animated. Speaking about the ancient world, Nolan argued that people tend to view antiquity in strange, distorted ways, elevating it with a kind of cultural prejudice just because it is old, when the actual text of Homer's poem is earthy, grounded, and accessible. His stated goal was to strip away assumptions that are not based on anything logical, discussing the concept of blackened bronze and what can and cannot be known from fragmentary archaeological records. And in a separate interview with the LA Times, he allowed himself one moment of vulnerability that instantly went viral, admitting that maybe he was being naive with some of these choices, and that it might come back to bite him, but that for him, the earthy approach was a no-brainer. The response to the response. If Nolan thought that would calm things down, he miscalculated, at least in the short term, because the moment his comments hit the internet, a fresh wave of backlash erupted, this time aimed not at the movie but at the man himself. Detractors were furious at the word irrelevant. Many people very clearly did not consider their objections irrelevant, and they rejected the premise that you need to watch a film before criticizing decisions that were visible in every trailer. Headlines immediately framed it as Nolan's sparking fresh backlash, and the discourse machine spun up all over again. To his critics, this was arrogance, an elite director waving away legitimate audience concerns from inside a bubble. To his defenders, it was the calmest possible response to months of coordinated harassment, delivered by a man who has earned the right to bet on his own instincts more than perhaps any filmmaker alive. And so the battle lines were drawn for opening weekend. one side predicting a historic faceplant that would prove the audience revolt was real. The other side predicting that, as with Batman, as with a 3-hour biopic about a physicist, Nolan would once again be vindicated. Everything came down to July 17th. Opening weekend, the verdict. What happened next is already the stuff of box office legend. On Thursday night, the Odyssey collected $17.6 million in previews across roughly 3,900 North American theaters, the best preview number of the entire year. Projections immediately surged toward a $50 million opening day and a 3-day weekend around $117 million, with some rival studios reportedly seeing numbers closer to $120 million. To put that in perspective, that trajectory would hand the Odyssey the biggest live-action opening of the year, the biggest R-rated opening of the year, the biggest opening weekend for an R-rated film in Universal's entire history, and Christopher Nolan's biggest debut since The Dark Knight Rises back in 2012. Globally, the film is eyeing a launch north of $200 million. The general audience that was supposedly boycotting this movie showed up in overwhelming, record-breaking numbers. There is also a delicious irony buried in the timeline here. Was just the studio pre-writing its excuse for a flop? Their entire argument rested on one prediction, that the general audience would stay home. That prediction just detonated on the launch pad, and the review bombing campaign that skeptics feared would poison the film's reputation. It ran face first into a wall. In the film's first hours of release, waves of extremely negative user reviews did appear online, and fans immediately accused certain accounts of a coordinated bombing operation. But Rotten Tomatoes' verified rating system, which requires proof of an actual ticket purchase, told a completely different story. With over 1,000 verified ratings counted, The Odyssey posted a 97% verified audience score, breaking Nolan's own career record previously shared by Memento, Batman Begins, and The Dark Knight, with an average rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars. The overall audience score, even including the suspected bombing attempts, still sat at 90%. Critics, meanwhile, delivered a 96% score, making this, on paper, the best-reviewed film of Nolan's entire career, with early chatter already positioning it as a front-runner for Best Picture. Online discussion has been dominated not by controversy, but by specific moments audiences are obsessing over, from the shocking Athena reveal to Cersei's horror-soaked sequence to the sacking of Troy, and an action-packed third act that people are calling among the best things Nolan has ever put on screen. So who actually won here is where the conversation gets genuinely interesting, because both sides of this war are currently claiming victory, and the truth is messier than either side wants to admit. Nolan's defenders are celebrating what looks like a total humiliating rout of the backlash movement. Months of dislikes, boycott threats, and billionaire dunking, and the result is the biggest opening of Nolan's career outside of Batman, record audience scores, and an awards campaign already warming up. By that reading, Nolan's comment about irrelevance was not arrogance, it was prophecy. But the skeptics have not gone quiet, and some of their arguments deserve a fair hearing. Some commentators maintain that the controversy still cost the film real money, arguing that without months of negative discourse around the casting, a film with these reviews and this cast might have opened even higher. Others point out that with a $250 million production budget and a reported marketing spend that pushes the total investment toward $375 million, a huge opening weekend is only the first step of a very long journey. This movie does not need an Oppenheimer-style opening. It arguably needs an Oppenheimer-style marathon, months of steady business carried by word of mouth, to become genuinely profitable. If the film's legs falter, expect the backlash crowd to declare that they were right all along. And there is one more layer of speculation swirling through industry circles right now, which is what this whole saga means for the next controversy, because studios are reportedly watching this case closely as a test of whether online outrage campaigns actually move the box office needle at all, or whether the entire discourse economy is, to borrow Nolan's word, irrelevant. As for Nolan himself, the man at the center of the storm, he has already said everything he apparently intends to say. He compared the moment to Batman, admitted it might bite him, bet everything on sincerity and the strength of the text, and then let the audience deliver the verdict. And this weekend, in theaters across the entire planet, that verdict is coming in louder than anyone predicted. The face that supposedly emptied 1,000 seats just filled every IMAX screen on Earth. So now I want to hear from you. Was this backlash a genuine audience revolt that got steamrolled by star power and hype? Or was it always a loud minority mistaking their echo chamber for the real world? Did Nolan handle the criticism with class? Or was calling it irrelevant a slap in the face to fans of the original epic? Drop your take in the comments below because this debate is not ending anytime soon. And if you want more stories from behind the curtain of Hollywood's biggest wars, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on because the next one is already brewing. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.